you don't want to start a business?
What if you don't want to start a business? You want to go the traditional route?
Yeah, lots of people just like, the whole concept would just be overwhelming, or they're not willing to take the risk. It's like, I'd just rather go to a job and do the job. But I've had all these ideas, I've tried stuff, I've made no progress with anything. I'm just sitting at home, doom scrolling, and I'm like, maybe I should just go get a job. I don't know what to do from here. Starting a business is too hard. Maybe it's not for me.
Yeah, so the intention is like building wealth, basically at that point in
I
time.
want to build wealth, but I don't want to start a business. I just want to get a job, get paid every week.
So I suppose in that situation, I would then be looking, okay, if I'm not going to go the business owner route, I would be looking at, well, again, like, what am I actually interested in? Because if you're going to commit your life to something and work, a third of your time is virtually, if you're not sleeping, you're working, and there's not much outside of that. So I would think very carefully, right, I want to make as much dollars as I possibly can. I want to be interested in the topic. So I would first and foremost probably get in some role that has a sales element to it, where I'm not just going to get paid a set wage for the rest of my life, but there's a part of that I can dictate what my earnings can be based on my own output. So I get to control a function of that. That's something that I would be looking at. Now, what's going to give you that? All right, welcome back to the Winners Playbook. Josh here with my regular co-host, Billy, and today we're going to be talking on two main topics. First of all, the government has come out and rushed through some legislation which is going to be affecting anyone with a self-managed super fund, those in particular who are looking at buying a property as we speak. So we're going to talk about what those changes exactly are. And then we're going to do something a little bit different on the podcast today. We're actually going to have a little bit of a debate. We're going to be talking about who has it harder, today's generation or the older generations, when it comes to building wealth. So Billy's actually going to be taking the stance that today's generation does have it harder. And I am going to be fighting for, well, I suppose my generation, but actually saying that they have it easier than the older generations that have been. But before we get into it, Billy, let's maybe touch on the changes with regards to self-managed super funds, because this one did come as a bit of a surprise, didn't it?
Yes. Yeah, yes and no. Like, it's come up a number of times over the years, and I know the Greens have been desperate to shut down SMSFs for property investing. So it wasn't a surprise from that perspective, but it was not mentioned in the federal budget. And then just a couple of weeks later, they've come out and said, yep, this is happening immediately. So yeah, a bit of a shock.
Yes, basically Labor's had to succumb to the Greens' pressure to push this through, to get their tax changes and everything else they wanted to push through as a part of the budget. So I guess the recap of what we need to know, the cutoff for a signed contract is either the 10th or 11th of August, isn't it?
Yeah, 10th of August.
So if you don't have a contract signed at that point in time, so we're talking specifically for people who have a self-managed super fund and you're looking at buying a residential property in that fund as we speak, commercial is not going to be affected by this, but residential you are. So a contract on a property has to be signed by the 10th of August. From that point of time onwards, you will no longer be able to borrow in a self-managed super fund to acquire a residential property, but it is important to note that you could still buy a residential property, but you're going to have to basically just pay cash for the whole thing, which kind of in a way defeats the purposes of why you'd be borrowing through the fund anyway, because you're doing it to utilize leverage. So there's probably not going to be a huge amount of cash buyers out there. So yeah, we've got a few clients caught in this situation that are going to be really trying to make it happen before the cutoff. But I suppose it's important to note, if you are signing a contract before 10th of August, you're going to have a good team around you in terms of finance team, maybe a buyer's agent, etc. And they're going to be ensuring that, you put some clauses in there subject to finance. So I suppose if you did sign a contract before 10th of August, but then for some reason finance did fall over and you couldn't get it done, you could always just pull back on the deal. So more than ever, you need to have a really good team around you if you're trying to pull this off over the next 40 odd days approximately. I suppose you've got to make it happen. We've got some clients that are doing it, but yeah, if you're caught in this situation, just make sure you've got your team working around you. And I guess we won't really dive deep into, I suppose, thoughts on the whole topic itself, because I seen Albanese did say something along the lines of they're trying to hit the ultra rich and wealthy. Realistically, this is not going to hurt them in any way, shape or form, because they've already built up all of their wealth and all pre-existing properties and loans are grandfathered anyway. So
the ultra wealthy don't care about super.
Yeah.
Because super's what, $2 million each. If you've got tens of millions or hundreds of millions, super's like insignificant. And they're certainly not, desperate to go through the complexity of borrowing to buy residential properties in those super funds.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not hitting the ultra wealthy.
No, it's a good headline. It's a good headline, but I think that those that are going to be hurt most, without diving deep into it, are going to be like the middle class, like the average Aussie who was looking at leveraging through super to buy a property with the hopes of selling it tax-free after age 60. I think those are going to be the ones that do get hurt the most. But look, it is what it is, and we've had to adapt and change, and that come at us pretty quick out of nowhere, and we've had a few clients impacted. So key message there, if you're caught in that situation or you've got a fund and you haven't purchased and you're thinking about doing it, make sure your team around you is on that one pronto. But leaving that one, so we're going to get into, so who has it harder, today's generation or the older generation when it comes to building wealth? This is an interesting one that we wanted to talk about for a little while. I've done a few videos online around the topic itself, particularly post-budget. I had a bit of a rant one night for about 5 minutes, just sitting out in my backyard, and I was a little fired up just post-budget, and I had some conversations with some clients, and I had to get my thoughts out there around this whole conversation of, the wealth gap, and does the older generation had it so much easier than us, and then, how are we ever going to get ahead based upon, property prices and that whole conversation. So what we've decided to do is we're going to kind of put together our main sort of 4 or 5 points. We haven't cross-checked these points with each other either for anyone that is listening. So we're going to be reacting live on the spot. And yeah, I guess we'll let the listeners decide who came out with a more compelling argument at the end.
That's it. So I'm going to argue that it's harder today than it used to be. You're going to argue that it's easier. These aren't necessarily all of our views strictly, like it's a debate. So we've got to take one side.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and because I guess there are parts that I naturally was thinking through in my argument here, which I know you're going to probably go to some of those points, which I agree with. So we'll see how it plays out. But do you want to maybe lead us in? What's, I suppose, your opening statement or framing to the?
Yeah, I've got an opening statement.
Yep.
All right. So firstly, I apologise to Mum if Mum's listening, because I'm going to use her as Big Sam. I'm going to use Mum as an example.
Nice.
So my parents, both hardworking. I've got siblings. I have 3 kids. They bought a family home in Sandringham, which is a very nice suburb of Melbourne on the beach, in 1979 for $47,000. Dad was an accountant. Mum was a teacher. And then had 3 kids. So Mum took years off work as well.
Mm-hmm.
That house went up for sale 3 years ago. I went to the auction. Still there, like hasn't been rebuilt or anything like that. It sold for $2.8 million.
So what are the sums on that? What are we talking about?
Well, if you've got an accountant and a teacher today, are they saving up for a couple of years and buying a $2.8 million house? Is my point.
Mm-hmm.
My parents didn't keep that house, unfortunately. They sold it before all that growth.
Yeah,
before all that growth happened. But interestingly enough, at that auction, it looked like a first home buyer, but she had her dad standing right next to her.
Right.
And then it just sold again. So she only held it for 3 years. So
wow.
I don't know what happened there. Maybe the interest rate hikes hit hard. You hear that story, you think, well, that's fine. I'll just build wealth in another way. So I'll rent vest. That's just been shut down. And we've had CGT hiked, negative gearing taken away, etc. All right, I'll rent. Rents have gone up by 43% in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that is real. So a lot of the roads to wealth that were traditionally used have been shut down, not just by the government, also through rising inflation, soaring property prices, etc. So it is much harder today.
Interesting. That's a good opening, Billy. I like that. Well, so I guess my whole angle, and yeah, that's an interesting one. So 79,000 your parents bought in the 70s, was it? Wow. Be good to do the ROI on that over how many years that was. That's incredible. Well, I guess my whole argument and the angle I'm going to be taking here is, I suppose, it's harder to buy the same assets using, I guess, doing what your parents did in today's environment. But I don't think it's ever been easier to create wealth, because the opportunities to increase your income, invest globally, and start businesses has changed dramatically, which is what I'm going to be talking about. And Boom has built wealth by saving. Millennials and Gen Z are going to be building their wealth by increasing their earning power, is what I believe. And I definitely going to agree, and we're going to talk about the property argument, debt to income ratios. We'll get into that. But I suppose if the plan is to get one job, work 40 years and buy one house, it's definitely harder. So if that's your plan to live life like that and play out, which probably a lot of our parents did, is they bought that family home and just paid it off, I'm going to just succumb to that and say it's definitely harder if that is ultimately what your plan is. But what my point is, building wealth isn't built the same way anymore, and the rules have definitely changed. And if you understand the new rules, technology, investing, AI, global businesses, how to use leverage, I think today is the easiest period in history to become wealthy.
There you go. All right.
So that's my stance. So do you want to lead us away, Billy? What's your first point? What have you got on your
Well,
own?
look, I know we're not just going to talk about housing, but we'll start with that.
Yep.
All right. And I've given an example, but if we look, that's just one example. If we look at the actual data, since 1975, house prices have grown by 3,400%. Wages have grown by 1,100% over the same period. So house prices grew at 3 times the rate of wages. That's incredible. So the average house today, you need 8 years of average earnings to save for a deposit. And we'll think about the solo buyer test. So you used to be able to buy a house on one salary and raise a family. That is simply not possible today. And what we've seen in recent times is renting is no escape either. So, rents didn't rise that much up until the last 5 years. Now they've exploded. It's up 43% in the last 5 years. So the reason housing is such a big part of this is if you want to build wealth or you want to start a business, you still need somewhere to live. So that's just soaking up all of your income. And it didn't used to be that way.
Compelling. That's a good point. Well, yeah, I had the statistics as well in the 70s. So the average house was around $40,000. Average wage was about $10,000. So you do the numbers on that, it's roughly 4 times your annual income. And then you compare that today, the average house is say around $950. Average wage is about 105. So it's about a nine times annual income ratio. So I don't think I can actually debate that point in any way, shape or form, because I guess ultimately, if, like I said earlier, if your plan is virtually just to get into your first home and sit on that over 30 or 40 years, and that's how you're defining and deeming your wealth creation to be, no doubt, it's just harder. I don't think there's any easy way around that whatsoever. And yeah, I guess the changes that have just come out as well from the government around negative gearing, it changes the landscape.
So you conceding a point to me already?
I think I may. I don't think I can. Well, okay, let me fire back here. Let me fire back here, because I guess the point around, which is something that I've seen with the older generations is, and I had this influence when we first bought our home when we were 21, was the in-laws were telling me to pay off that home as soon as I possibly could and sink virtually every dollar I had possibly into it. Now, if I had done that, I would have paid the home off for sure by this point. But I guess, looking back at, say, 50 years ago, like what ways did you have to create wealth at that point in time? Family home, property, like buying property, and outside of that, like you could be buying stocks and shares, but ETFs and all of that wasn't really a thing. So I guess the opportunity to invest and the ways you can build wealth is never been easier. So if you were buying, like, what are your alternatives back then? Buying property and some direct shares, like what else would there have been? Or starting a business. But were there any other major ways of building wealth at that point in time? Like there wasn't all these amazing ETFs.
Under the mattress, wasn't it?
Cash under the mattress, yeah. Probably getting a decent interest rate at that point in time. So I guess what's my argument here around it's never been easy to actually make money. So back then, you might have done a degree, but building a business had a lot more barriers to actual entry. Advertising, how would you advertise your business back then? Yellow pages. Yeah, that was a thing even when I was younger. So that was around.
Mail drops.
Advertising, but even like, TV, radio, or all of those ways, they wouldn't have been cheap to do it as well. Whereas if you look at right now, I suppose, what can you do today? You start an online business, you can consult, build software, create digital products, sell courses, start YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, podcasts, like you name it. Like the barriers to creating income have absolutely collapsed in terms of, what those opportunities look like. And the internet has really turned every Australian into someone with access to about 8 billion people around the world that you could tap into at any point in time. So I guess my final point around that topic of earning money has never been easier is the average person has access to more earning opportunities on their phone than their parents had probably in their entire city they lived in back in those days. So the opportunity to earn income has never been greater. And I guess going on with the point there as well is I think investing has never been easier. And my biggest point is people don't need to follow the traditional route of building wealth, which was you buy your home, you pay off your home, and then maybe you buy another property predominantly, and that was the way to go. So back then, you probably had a stockbroker if you were doing anything besides property. You were calling up your stockbroker and they were going to be making some trades for you, I suppose. But back then, you had larger minimum parcels to invest. Brokerage was a lot more expensive as well. You know what, your research process, you're probably just relying predominantly on a stockbroker at that point in time. Whereas today, you can be buying ETFs, you can be investing in the global markets, investing automatically, you know, owning fractions of companies, investing for as little as, say, $10 a week if you so want to. And the access to information is like nothing we've ever seen. So you have all this information virtually at the tip of your fingers, which to me then goes, well, you don't have to build wealth traditionally through buying of property. You could be looking at investing in the share market, ETFs, and all of these other ways to build wealth, which, mind you, probably could be and generally may provide you a better outcome in terms of your return, and you don't have to worry about sinking $500,000 or buying $1 million property, and you can maintain freedom around what you're doing with your life. And possibly, I guess the one that I have to battle with there is the rent, because the rents have skyrocketed. But I guess my argument to that would be is life's full of trade-offs. So rather than living in that $1,000 or $1,500 a week rental, you're going to have to delay gratification, embrace it.
Yeah, well, I am seeing a lot more resistance to living in a share house. When I was with D's, you just accept you're just in a share house or you're with mum and dad.
But why is that though? Like, why do you think that is? Like, why would there be the resistance? Is it just more of a
Entitlement?
Yeah. Is that what it is? Like, I don't know. Why do I have to do that?
I mean, it is bloody hard to get a rental. That's the thing, right? So,
Yeah.
And if you say, yeah, I'm going to move in with 4 of my mates, then landlord might say, I might choose someone else. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I suppose you can, you probably don't have to declare some of that on you.
No, that's true. Right. So on investing,
Yep.
I would argue that having all that information is a bad thing. Because we've seen it before. New clients come along and they've tried investing and they've given up.
Yep.
Because they're overwhelmed. Like Bitcoin's a great example. Every other person I speak to now, what have you got? Like, you're going through their assets. Oh, I think I've got some Bitcoin.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Are you into that? No, I don't like it. I'm not interested anymore.
Yep.
And they buy some, but they think they're going to make fast money. Maybe they do for the first year. Then it drops and they shit themselves. And then they either completely lose interest or they sell it and say, I'm never doing that again. Back in the day, if you had a stockbroker, they would gatekeep that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're buying shares, you just call them up. Hey, I've got some cash. I need to buy some stocks. The whole process would take time. It'd all be paper-based and mail-based. And that's it. You'd be forced to set and forget.
Yeah.
Whereas these days, you've got the app on your phone, you're checking it 10 times a day.
Yeah.
For most people, it doesn't work. And that information that you've got access to, everyone's got access to all this information all the time, and it gives you no edge. And if you look at Warren Buffett's returns, his returns have been eroded over the last 20 years because he lost that edge. Like, everyone's got the same information now. Mm-hmm. So I would argue it's harder. You used to just be able to call a stockbroker or buy a second property, and that's all you had to do because all of your wages were not being sucked up by home loan payments or rent. So you could afford to just save cash, maybe buy an extra property, and you were set.
Yeah. Yeah, because you really, I suppose that's that whole analysis paralysis piece. Like, when you've got too many options in front of you, too many doors you could go down, then you kind of do nothing. And, I suppose it is easy for me to sit here and argue and go, okay, well, back then, put your money in your bank, or you buy property, or you might buy shares for a stockbroker, and that's probably it. Whereas now, what have you got? Like crypto, side hustle businesses, a million ETFs in virtually everything that you want to invest in.
There's like 10 space ETFs that come out in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, and with all of that choice, it does lead people, Yeah, I guess like that put to me then comes down to the individual ownership and responsibility. Is like you have to take ownership over your life to make those decisions for you, whereas no one's going to make them for you. But I won't lie, Billy, it's a tough argument to fight back on with that one. I'm trying to think of some.
You've seen it too. You've seen it with clients that come in.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right.
Some people get it right, but more often than not, it's too much. It's overwhelming and it's tough.
Yeah, but more choice is not a good thing.
And then also, this is the other thing, because you got your phone. Your phone is a big problem. Right? You're looking on there, and it's full of people telling you how much money they made in Bitcoin or gold or silver or whatever. You think, I need to do that. And then you try, you don't make fast money.
Yeah.
You think you're a failure, and then you give up.
Yeah, the whole comparison piece. So if you look back 50 years, you probably didn't know what your neighbor was up to unless you spoke to them. You didn't see what people halfway across the other side of the world are up to at your age, and you're like, oh, why don't I have that? So I've got to dig in here, Billy. I've got to really dig in here because those are all really compelling points, of which I unfortunately agree to.
All right, well, let's talk about, this is something else that's changed. University. It used to be free. So you go to university, it was free, and then you'll get a graduate job. And then once you got through the grad years, you'd save for a couple of years, you'd have your deposit, you'd buy a house. Done. Let me tell you a story. So my wife's a nurse. A few years ago, our friend Daniel Andrews said the Victorian government will pay for nurses for degrees, for nursing studies, because we need more nurses. It was just after COVID. We love our nurses. We need more. We are going to pay for your study. And in fact, if you're already a nurse and you want to upskill, we'll pay for your postgrad study. So my wife wanted to be a midwife. She's wanted to for years. She took up Dan's kind offer, went back and did the midwifery studies. As it turned out, it wasn't free. The government paid for a little bit of it, but it was completely a disorganised mess. Like, she had to put it all on HECS, and then they gave her a check for part of the cost. So there was a lot of bullshit in it. And then she became a midwife, right? That's fine. So she was okay. She got part of the cost covered. New nurses went in, did their degree, had it free or partially free, came out, and just now we're learning the government can't afford to take on all these grads. So more than half of the grads cannot get a job. They'll only take experienced nurses. Whereas back in the day, it was free study, here's your grad job, you're set.
Yeah.
Whereas now you pay 50 grand for a degree, you're going to struggle to get a gig at the end of it. And you struggle with HECS for the next 20 years.
How would you respond to that, Billy?
If I was you,
how do you
well,
fight?
you should be telling me how you don't need to go to uni.
Yeah, well, that's going to be a part of my argument. But yeah, like I guess you can't, like, how good would have a free degree? I mean, like, I'm one of the fortunate ones who paid off my HECS pretty early. But I guess my firing back there would come from, I guess, even when I'm talking to the students, when I do those school presentations, like, you do have to think very carefully around the path that you go down. Because I started on a university degree and then I deferred, immediately started racking up HECS debt, which I then paid for literally nothing. So, the way I think about university degrees these days is, I suppose, before you're going to take that leap, like, think very critically around what you want to do with your life. And I guess for us as financial advisors, now the university degree, it is required, but it's kind of just like your ticket to the game. But I would be thinking very carefully around that, because I see a bunch of kids these days and people doing degrees that I don't know what their prospects are going to be once they finish that and what they're going to come out and be doing. But, their parents sort of force them down that way. So, I don't think there's a great way to respond to that other than the fact of, you kind of gave me the answer there, Billy. You don't have to build wealth through the traditional pathway, which I guess is, again, historic. Yeah, there's way more options. And I guess the biggest option really is, okay, if you're not going to go down the traditional route to do a university degree, get a job, start earning a salary, buy your first home. So what is the other options? And I have clients that have exactly done this, which is going the business opportunity is really where you've got to be looking there, which is where all of the reward lies, but all of the risk also lies at the same time. It's a more treacherous pathway, but one that can be significantly more wealth I suppose you can create a lot more wealth through it. So I guess the basic point around that is starting a business has never been cheaper, and the cost of entrepreneurship has basically collapsed, because way back then, you're looking down your options of what are you going to do? A free university degree and probably guaranteed to get a job at the end of it back then. Or do you go out and create a business, which you probably would have needed like an office front, receptionists, traditional accountants and lawyers to help you set all of those things up, probably need a printer from day one, and all of these costs are, all of those things that are going to go into it. Whereas now, like, what do you need? Well, you needed an idea. You definitely need an idea. Where does the idea come from? Pain, passion are good ways to look at it. Like, what's something that's been a problem in your life that there's probably other people out there that have had those problems as well. Or you might even have like an amazing passion about something that you just incredibly love and then you just lock in on. But then once you've got that, it's just a matter of what do you need? Probably a laptop to start. And then you just begin. And then you've got this amazing thing of AI nowadays as well, which was kind of a separate point, but I might then lead into it, which is a massive equalizer, because no longer then do you need to start going, okay, I've got to hire all of these staff to get off the ground. I might need a marketing manager who's going to help me shoot some content. I might need, a bookkeeper doing these things for me, and like all of those standard functions within business. Whereas AI is basically an equalizer, because you can, and mind you, I'm not going to say I'm an expert at using AI, but I know people that have set up literally those roles in their business, doing those exact functions that a human would be doing now, and they've just got AI agents basically doing it for them. So the barrier to creating a business and going down that way is the barrier to entry is virtually nil to nothing at this point in time, providing you can afford a laptop, you've got a good internet connection, and you
have somewhere to live.
And you've got somewhere to live. But if we're talking to the Gen Z and millennials, the clients that I've seen that have done this, they're typically still living at home. And that's what I say to the younger generation is make the most of it whilst you can. So I wouldn't say go out and try share house or rent straight away if you can, providing your family situation, your parents are okay for you to stick around. I would say stick around for as long as you can to an extent, because then there is a detriment to that of not getting out into the big wide world and learning lessons, which was something that was important for me, doing that at an early age. But yeah, stick around, and then if it fails, you've lost nothing. Like if you're living at your parents' place, maybe you're paying a little bit of board and rent, maybe not, mum's still cooking for you. What have you got to lose? Like, that's where you can take on as much risk as you want. Start with this business idea, commit to it. If that doesn't work, go on to something else, try that again. And again, you don't need $100,000 to sink into that. Even if your idea did need $100,000 to sink into it, if you've got a good idea, the amount of capital available today compared to the older generations and old times, like if you had a great idea back then, like, who are you going to tell? Your neighbor and say, give me $100,000? Like, probably not. The bank probably wasn't going to lend to you as well. Whereas nowadays, there are, venture capital, there's so much money that wants to invest in small startups. So that access to capital has never been easy. And it's never been easier to just start a business sitting in your room and off you go.
What if you don't want to start a business?
What if you don't want to start a business? So you want to go the traditional route?
Yeah, lots of people just like the whole concept would just be overwhelming, or they're not willing to take the risk, or it's like, I'd just rather go to a job and do the job.
Yeah.
Then what do you do?
Yeah, well, I guess you got to be real. Like, what's the outcome we're saying here? But you want to do that and create maximum wealth. We're saying you want to create a lot of wealth. Or
I'm saying I like that, but I've had all these ideas. I've tried stuff. I've made no progress with anything.
Yep.
Now I'm just sitting at home, doom scrolling. And I'm like, maybe I should just go get a job, because I don't know what to do from here. Starting a business is too hard. Maybe it's not for me. How do I build wealth?
Yeah, so the intention is like building wealth, basically at that point.
I want to build wealth, but I don't want to start a business. So I just want to get a job, get paid every week.
Yeah. So I suppose in that situation, so we're wanting to build wealth. So that's the point.
Yeah.
I would then be looking, okay, if I'm not going to go the business owner route, I would be looking at, again, like, what am I actually interested in? Because if you're going to commit your life to something and work, a third of your time is virtually, if you're not sleeping, you're working, and there's not much outside of that. So I would think very carefully, all right, I want to make as much dollars as I possibly can. I want to be interested in the topic. So I would first and foremost probably get in some role that has a sales element to it where I'm not just going to get paid a set wage for the rest of my life, but there's a part of that I can dictate what my earnings can be based upon my own output. So I get to control a function of that. That's something that I would be looking at. Now, what's going to give you that? Probably not a standard accounting role. It's probably not going to give you that. Probably not being a teacher. It's probably not going to give you that. But if you're getting into, how many clients do I have in various sales type roles? It could be, I'm not thinking car salesman, but clients, a lot of people in tech, in marketing, where a part of their role does have a sales element where they got to grow revenue for the business, and then they can participate in the uplift of that without them taking on all of the risks and worrying about all the staffing problems and anything of sorts. So if I was going down that route, I would look at getting into something that gives me the ability to still dictate in a way what I can earn, but then it still is on me in that scenario.
So I still have to work hard, do I?
Still got to work hard. Still got to work hard. Well, that's going to be part of like my closing remarks. Is the problem is around my generation. There is a part of that where there is some people I see there that just don't want to work hard and sit there and complain. But I won't jump to that one too soon. So that's what I would say.
All right. Okay. Let's talk taxes.
Ooh. I might get a leg up here. What have you got?
I'm worried about the sort of data you're going to throw at me here.
Yep.
So I'm just looking at recent history. 50% capital gains tax discount gone. Bracket creep accelerating. Right, so if you earn more than 190K, half your money is going straight to the government. And then you go out and spend money, another 10, 20% of that's probably going to the government in GST and fuel excise and everything else. And then the rest of it's going on housing. So income tax is cooked. Capital gains is the government's taking a huge chunk there. And now they're talking about minimum rates on trust income, minimum rates on CGT. So this is all being brought in, whereas the 25 years prior, we did not have that. So what have you got for me before the 25 years prior? We have high tax rates, didn't we?
Well, we did. And also, the primary residence exemption, you can still sell your family home tax-free. So fortunately, government's not going after that at this point in time, but who knows what happens in the future. But this was interesting. So I had to go back 50 years ago, well before my time, and also your time as well, Billy. So
that far before my time, sorry.
Before you were born. So the top tax rate, if we look back then, hit a peak of nearly 70% in Australia.
That's pretty high.
Which is high. Now, the top tax rate here in Australia now is nearly 50%. It's 45% plus the Medicare levy, 47%. I won't get into the argument of then you add all the GST and all of these other taxes that we pay, which probably does put it back up over 60 to 70%. But this is just looking at the top individual marginal tax rates. So tax rates were high back then. Interestingly, though, looking for businesses around the mid-80s, company tax rate was nearly 50% also, running a business. So it was 49% in the mid-80s. Whereas if you compare that to now, the top tax rate for a company here in Australia is 30%. So tax rates have come off exponentially when you look at it like that. Probably doesn't feel like it. And I agree that the whole bracket creep conversation is a fair and valid one because the inflation has been going up, cost of living is going up, and the brackets haven't really changed over the years. So I think that's a fair point. But then equally with that, incomes, as we said, have, I suppose have been increasing. There's been wage growth there. You are, I suppose, you do have the ability to hold on to a greater proportion of your money nowadays as well. But the appeal there, particularly if you want to go the business route, has probably been never better than ever, even with the recent changes. And some of it hasn't been legislated. But Australia still does have a rather low corporate tax rate compared to older times. So if you look at that 50 years ago, you could probably see why most people went the traditional route of, I'm just going to get a salary and do this. Whereas if you're looking at a company tax rate of 50%, imagine that nowadays, like most businesses would just shut. You wouldn't even open the doors at that. So if you're a 20-year-old 50 years ago and you're looking down the barrel of what your options are versus now, I think more than ever, it is so much more appealing to take on a bit of risk and go out and start a business and back yourself because the tax rates are incredibly more appealing. And I'd go further with that. Before, when was it? 1987, franking credits didn't exist. So there was actually double taxation. Yeah, there was double taxation on the share income. So if, like we said earlier, what were you doing back then to build wealth? You're buying property, you're probably doing some direct stock picking, or you had a stockbroker, and you were probably only investing in Australia at that point in time as well, not the globe, which was problematic, as we know, for diversification purposes. And Australia historically is providing higher rates of dividends, but until 1987, you weren't getting a chop out on your franking credits, and then you were paying double tax because the company was already paying tax on the profits, and then you as the individual were paying tax on your profits. Whereas now we do have that franking credit system in place, which stops double taxation. So I thought that was quite interesting, and that leads me to believe if you're looking at investing in some of those factors, today's a better time.
I reckon.
Yeah.
Well, all you had to do is buy a few properties back then. You'd be laughing. Sit on the land.
Well, that is a problem because pre-1985 as well, there was no CGT on those assets. So if you did buy a property 50 years ago, I can't argue with that because if you still held those properties, you weren't paying any CGT on those.
So it really was just one way to get wealthy back then. It was just buy land.
It really was. When you think about that, it's just no wonder the older generations is just trying to push their kids into buying property because that's all they knew. But you can't really blame them when that's how much wealth was created. But what about if we stay around that though as well? Because I guess one of my points as well I got to talk about is compulsory superannuation. So that only mind you, from doing a bit of digging and deep diving here, I actually learned that superannuation in Australia has actually been around. Going way back, there was forms in the 1800s for superannuation in certain industries. There was actually forms of superannuation around, and then it started coming in predominantly for public service employees and financial sector workforce, and then no compulsory super until 1992. So the younger generations now, so again, my generation, they're growing up in an environment where now 12% of their pay, if they've gone the employee option, is getting pushed away towards superannuation in the most tax-effective environment in Australia. So they're kind of guaranteed, if they just earn an average salary for 40 plus years, you're going to have a pretty comfortable retirement.
So just struggle for 40 years, just barely paying the rent. And then by the time you're 60, you might have a bit of cash to pull out.
Well, I suppose it's what you're earning though. So if you go on the average salary over that period of time on $100,000, let's just say, I would agree that's going to be a struggle to maintain a good lifestyle. But again, this goes back to my earlier point. If the game here is to create wealth, like if you just set on virtually buying that home and you're going to sit on it for 40 years, getting 12% paid into your superannuation, buying a home and paying that off over 30 years, it's not a bad option for you. But it's not going to give you it's not going to give you flexibility and freedom to do what you want. You're going to have to wait till you're 60 to have any of that sort of freedom. And I think my point here is I reckon all the younger generations more than ever have the ability to not wait until they're 60 and actually achieve a level of financial freedom, which a lot of people don't do in their 40s or 50s if they start hammering when they're in their 20s.
All right. Do you know what? With the tax, though, I bet you there were some sweet loopholes. Because these days the ATO is just all over any loophole, right? And they created that, what's it called? That catch-all legislation.
Oh, Division 100A, I think it is.
Yeah. Like if you do anything to avoid tax, they can just go, nah, you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you didn't need to, right? You just bought land, bought properties.
Well, if you didn't have to pay any tax on it.
Bang.
If you could sell it tax-free.
CGT free.
Yeah. I don't know how to argue against that.
All right,
unfortunately.
Are we ready for closing remarks, or do you have a number?
Yeah, have you got any final, what have you got on your end? Have you got any final points? I'm just looking through mine. I think I've covered off the most of them.
I've just got a closing remark.
Okay, let me just have a quick look here because, I think I've hammered home the points enough around, wealth compounds fast because information is free. Your parents, how they learn investing, newspapers, financial advice, and books. There was no real internet back then. Whereas now, you could watch a Warren Buffett interview, podcast, university lectures.
I thought you were saying just follow Josh Lee's TikTok.
And Billy Norman as well. You could get on TikTok. So I bet that all of this financial knowledge is just virtually at your fingertips. But I think more than ever, pushing the onus now back onto you is, I think that's the problem with the younger generation is, again, there's too much choice, there's too much flexibility and freedom here, and analysis paralysis happens. And then we go, well, you know, I'm not going to do this for myself. I'm just going to sit back here and let the government come and sort it out. And that's, I think, what the government's sort of playing on here is they're trying to make it seem that they're trying to shrink the wealth gap. But
so everyone needs to read Jocko Willink, Extreme
Ownership. Yeah. I could find some book recommendations.
Meritocracy.
Yeah, I could throw in some good book recommendations there. But no, looking through all of my points, Billy, I think I've covered off the most of them. And I think we can go to closing remarks if you like.
Right. Are we ready for the closing remarks here?
Yeah.
Okay. So this debate is not about ambition or attitude. Gen Z and millennials are already investing more actively than any previous generation. Right? ETFs, shares, crypto, side hustles. So they're trying. The problem is structural, not behavioural. So if you look at the past, free university, gone. CGT discount, gone. Negative gearing, gone. Both grandfathered, by the way. So previous generations have already built assets. They get to just enjoy the low tax rates on those gains. So the post-2027 tax regime locks in lower returns, the very assets that young people are turning to because property is unachievable. This is the real kicker, because I know you like talking about the effort gap. So I'm going to call it the effort ceiling.
Interesting. Okay.
So they're already putting in all the effort, but that's now capped because of the way these things are structured now and what's happening with the tax regime. So it's, you know, a 25-year-old years and years ago could work really hard and in a couple of years have a house deposit. The same 25-year-old now can work really hard and in a couple of years have bugger all. So how do you build wealth now for young people? You just sit around waiting for an inheritance, or you sell your soul and go take a job for the government or on a big build site. What do you think?
Some fair points. Yeah, well, I think the one around, like the effort gap and I suppose the reward for your effort is, I don't disagree there around the environment the government is creating. This is what I'm worried about is that, the environment the government is creating is all the wealth that's being created has benefited from all the rules that have then been, and they're saying that they're doing all of what they're doing now to equal the playing field, help all the first home buyers get in their home. But again, if we're looking from a wealth creation standpoint, like the rules are getting a lot difficult, more worse, like they're getting way more difficult to create and build wealth unless you're literally just going to buy a home and you're going to sit on it. So I don't disagree there that prices might fall in the shorter term for some, suburbs and areas that it might make it a little bit easier to get in. But if that's all you're set on, then in my mind, you're not actually creating much wealth if you're just going to buy a family home and sit on it, because you can argue and say that a family home is not even an asset really, because it doesn't pay you any money whatsoever. And until you sell it and release some equity out of it, it's not going to do anything for your financial freedom. So I don't disagree with some of what's been said there, Billy. So I'll give you that. Where do I want to start? I guess I might lead in with, I've said this quote before, but it's a good one, I suppose, summarizing for the younger generations, I guess the key trade-off that they face is, and this is Alex Hormozi's quote. I don't know if we've said it on the podcast. I've definitely said it on another podcast before and probably in a ton of videos at the same time. But basically it's this. So there's no perfect way to live up. There's no perfect way to live your 20s. You either live them up and become an underskilled 30-year-old, or you work them up and become an underlived 30-year-old. You have to figure out which you would rather be, accept the trade-offs, and no do-overs. Now, I'll say first and foremost, I took the option of working up my 20s to get the position that I'm in, which I'm not saying is abundantly wealthy or anything of the sorts, but like we're very comfortable. Wife doesn't work, but I like locked in as soon as I left high school, worked hard, full-time, did an online degree, wasn't free. So I had to pay all my way through my studies, did my degree, did my master's, worked full-time that whole time. That allowed us to get into our first home rather quick. So that is something I do say to the younger generations, that buying your first home, I still think is not a bad option. But we've already gone through the differences and how that's changed. But the only way you're going to do that these days is you've got to get working. You've got to start earning some money sooner. So if you're going to finish at school at 18 and then do a 4-year degree or even longer and then come out of the back of that and you haven't even earned any dollars at that point in time, like you're behind big time. So for me, what allowed us to do it is just going real hard straight away, work full time. What did we buy for? I think it was just sub $600,000 at that stage. Like people are still buying homes for that these days. But again, that wasn't a home in Brighton. That was like way out in the suburbs of Melbourne. So I think that quote really does ring true. And that's, I think, a problem that I see a lot of the younger generation is they sit on the sidelines and there's all this complaining happening, but I don't see much action happening at the same time is the problem. So I guess one of my closing remarks, other than saying that, is I think we've got to stop framing this purely as a wealth gap and start talking about the opportunity gap or even the effort gap, as you have said. So I think, buying your first home is harder than it was 30 to 50 years ago. I can't dispute that in the slightest. But if your goal is building wealth, not just buying the same house your parents purchased and lived in, then there's never been more opportunity. Never before have we had access to global markets, AI, the internet, low-cost investing, online businesses, and billions of potential customers from a device that literally just fits in your pocket. The rules have changed. Every generation believes the next generation had it easier. I think I hear that from everyone. That's just such a common trend. The reality is every generation faces different challenges. The rules have changed. Wealth today isn't built by working harder. It's built by adapting faster. That's what I think. The people who embrace technology, build valuable skills, and create multiple streams will outperform those waiting for opportunity to come to them. My view is simple. It may be harder to follow the old path to create wealth, but it's never been easier to create a new one.
There you go.
So there's my final remarks. Any thoughts, Emily?
No, I think in some ways, if we move on from having to take a side, in some ways it's easier, in some ways it's harder.
Yeah.
But you can't do what your parents did.
No.
Don't try and do the same.
Well, I think that's the key. That's the key thing for me. It's like
don't take your parents' advice.
Yeah, don't take your parents' advice. Like genuinely, if I would have taken,
you can't do the same. The same path is nowhere near as effective as it used to be.
No. Getting into your own family home and then trying to roll that out again, you can't sell those properties. Like the tax system's totally different. So you could do that 50 years ago and pay no tax, or even had acquired properties 50 years ago and then sell them if they were pre-1985 and pay no tax. So those rules, they're not here anymore. But again, I think the sticking point for me is I think we can agree there's definitely never been more opportunity and choice, but that can also be as equally a challenge when there is so many things you could possibly be doing. You're scrolling through Instagram, you're seeing this person's doing that, this person's doing this. And like I've got some clients scaling some businesses on e-commerce that I can't believe they're making so much money out of it. It's ridiculous, but they're the few, not the many as well. And that's why I think a lot of people, but then just keep trying things, but they never fully commit to anything whatsoever. So I don't know, how do you try to cut through how many options there are, like in your mind?
You can actually, this is one thing I think a lot of people miss, and COVID made this worse for young people, is just the networking side of things. Because you don't need to start a business. You can talk to someone else who started a business.
Yeah.
And you can say, I'm willing to work hard. What do I need to do? It's so hard to find good people. So as long as you're locked in.
Yeah.
Even if you look at our business, right? If we find someone young who's hungry, they've done the study, they're willing to work hard, there's not many other boxes they need to tick.
No.
And then earnings are uncapped because it's, you're an advisor, you build a client book.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that has to be a tick.
Work ethic and attitude, and you have to get out of your comfort zone. If you can do all those things, there's plenty of opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that talks to the point as well, like going back 50 years ago, you probably didn't have that opportunity to reach out to people to ask for experience or find mentors, whereas that's probably the fastest hack and easiest way to get ahead and get what you want in life nowadays, is virtually just seek out someone who's done what you are trying to do or are doing whatever you're trying to do, and you'll be shocked to know that most of the time they're willing to help and share their experiences. And I've personally firsthand seen that. So I think that's definitely a massive tick into like today's generation. It's never been easier. But the whole point of my concern is around what the government is doing is definitely, I think it's putting the younger generation in a position to not want to try as hard because it's so easy to sit back.
It's a message they're sending.
Yeah, it's so easy to sit back and go, well, 50 years ago they had all of this, like there was all this incentive there. Now you're looking down the barrel of not loopholes would have been shut down, but all of the appeal of using trusts and bucket companies. If you're running a business, possibly all of those are going to get hit. Minimum CGT on assets once they're sold. So yeah, I think there's a deeper or structural problem that's occurring in Australia, which is, mind you, then if I'm then looking down that, and if I was doing all of my time again, I would strongly be considering, do I even do it in Australia? And if I was starting a business, would I possibly just go offshore? New Zealand, no CGT, I believe. Singapore, I know it's definitely no CGT. Just did a podcast on it all last year. So I guess there's a deeper concern there for me around what does Australia look like actually in the future, and how can we still provide an incentive for the younger generations to get out there and want to have a crack and not go down the traditional route of, uni, this and that, or even if they then do and they're making good dollars and they're in the highest tax bracket, but you're not then paying 50% of that through to the government, which, okay, it is what it is, but then you're using that 50% to then invest, and then you're going to get taxed more on that again. I think that's the biggest problem I am foreseeing. And well, how does that change? Does the government change?
Well, that's a real concern. So part of the advice would also be, don't listen to politicians.
Yeah.
If you're wanting to build wealth as a young person,
yeah,
do not listen to politicians.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that's for me, it is always.
They're making it harder.
Yeah.
But it's also like a barriers to entry thing. If they're making it harder and most people saying it's too hard, but you're going, no, I can do it, then you're going to have less competition.
Well, isn't that a great way to think about it as well? It's like so many people are going to like bug this, like, well, where's the risk for reward here? It's not worth doing. But then from that, there's going to be less people doing and having a crack. So if you're one of those people that are going to get out there and have a crack, you're going to be competing, I guess, less people. So yeah, I don't know if we actually answered what we set out to do in terms of what was I think it was good arguments on both sides of the equation there. But look, hopefully everyone listening got something out of it. And it's something I'm definitely deeply passionate about myself. And it's why I go and talk at the schools with the younger generations, from having like been in their situation, say 10 years ago, like very easy to relate to I don't know, is there probably been a harder time figuring out what you want to do with your life? Because again, there are so many options. And then you're looking down the prospects of, I'm going to do this degree, and then like, what is AI going to do to my job? Like, what is that even going to look like? So I would actually say as well that that's a humongous challenge that the younger generation is definitely facing. Like, what is the prospects of their job and AI and the degree that they're going to spend all this time doing and pay for? And then is it even going to be worth it for them in the end?
Well, yeah, if I was a 18-year-old now, I would consider just doing a hard labor job on a government infrastructure project or for a mining company or something, and just get that savings buffer there, and then figure out what risk I'm going to take.
Yeah, well, good point. And it's
just work hard to start with, get some cash in the bank, then figure it out. Because it is a tough time with like technology and AI and all this stuff. It'll probably settle down in a couple of years, I think.
I think so.
Clearer.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, those like services and trades, like they're going to be in demand, and AI was not really coming for those. Robotics is a different conversation, but yeah. And if I didn't know, I'm just trying to think here, if I genuinely was like lost and I'm 18 or 19 or 20, and I don't know if university is the right path for me, and I don't have any major conviction around what I want to do with my life or a business opportunity I want to pursue, like I'll just figure out my way of just getting into the mines or one of those like high-paying, labor-intensive jobs. You're going to go earn $150,000, $200,000 plus, $250,000, which I see people doing. And then if you want to get into your first time, you're going to be able to get into your first time pretty quick.
You just talk to people.
And if you're doing that,
you gravitate towards something.
And well, through that time as well, you will then figure out what you do like doing and what you don't like doing, which was a part of what worked for me earlier on. Is I just tried a bunch of stuff and I figured out and just kept going, no, don't like this. And then I eventually figured out what financial planning was, but it was all through doing things of what I don't want to do and figuring that out. And then I narrowed it down to, okay, like this is what I actually want to do. So I think that's a great piece of advice, going earn a bunch of dollars. And if you just want to get in your first time, well, you're going to be able to do it a lot quicker than if you went another route. So any final remarks for you? Those are good ones.
No, I enjoyed that debate. Let's figure our next debate topic.
We'll think about the next one. Well, maybe if anyone is listening, if you've got any thoughts around what you want to hear us get into next time, I think the debates would probably get a little bit better next time as well. This was our first time around, but I nevertheless hope there's some good takeaways for you listening. And until next time, we'll see you then. Thanks for listening to the Winners Playbook. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you got value out of it, we'd really appreciate a 5-star review. Just remember, the information in this podcast is general in nature and doesn't take into account your personal objectives, financial situation, or needs. Before acting on anything discussed, consider whether it's appropriate for your circumstances. If you need advice tailored to your specific situation, reach out to the team at Link Wealth. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.